Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at pneumonia. And we're going to take a closer look at exactly what it is and what we should do if it ever happens to us or someone we know. Now, in order to understand pneumonia, you have to understand a little bit about our body. And it's not complicated. Our body is nothing but a bunch of cells and two fluids. Blood brings in the food, that's the kitchen, and everything that eats has to eliminate, and that goes into the lymph fluid, that's the other fluid, and that's the bathroom. So we have a kitchen and a bathroom, a bunch of cells. Food cells are eating and pooping. Now what goes into the lymph fluid? Mostly cellular waste, as well as dead cells. See, cells are dying and replicating itself all the time. So when a cell dies, we have part of the head of the cell, that would be where the RNA, the DNA would be located. So now it has a signature, you might say. It's a dead genetic debris. And and these are things that don't belong inside of us anymore. Once our cells have waste matter, it has to go exit the body. When cells die, we got to get that out the body. So most of our diseases come from having things inside of us that don't belong there. So we have too much cellular waste is one of our problems. So what happens with medicine is they only teach our so-called experts the cells, and they specialize in a bunch of cells like the eyes, for example, and then they don't study the rest of the body. But most importantly, they only study the blood and they don't study the lymph system. Most of our diseases is when the lymph system backs up, because all of our cells are dumping garbage into the lymph system. The lymph system has to be cleansed and filtered, but that system breaks down eventually because we're making mistakes and we damage our bodies and they stop functioning properly. And what happens is when there's too many particles inside the lymph fluids, it goes above a saturation point, and it's just like a steam safety valve in an engine that has to let off steam. The same thing happens to us. When there's too many particles inside our lymph system, the lymph system is going to back up. And where does it back up into? It backs up backwards into all the cells and tissues that they surround. That's the disease process. So to understand what pneumonia is, you have to understand what a cold and the flu is. And you have to understand what all these other skin conditions are. And all of these is where the body's trying to dump these excess garbage. So if we go above a saturation point, the body in its wisdom says, got to get rid of this stuff somewhere. Let's go to some organs that can exit the body. The nose and sinus areas, now that's the colds and the flus. And then through the skin, we got all types of crap coming out of our skin. It's usually red, right? Because that's acid burn. Our waste matter is very acidic. And then when the body says, hey, let's try the lungs, that can exit the body, that's pneumonia. So if you go to a hospital with pneumonia, they're going to go, oh, it's bacterial pneumonia, oh, it's viral pneumonia. Hey, we identified some markers here, we got some RNA, DNA, it's a virus, it's dead genetic debris, it's not living, it's not attacking you. We're not getting rid of that garbage, and it's coming back and causing problems. So that's what pneumonia is. And if you take a look at Dr. John Tilden, he saw more pneumonia patients than any doctor ever living in history. Never lost one patient. Now listen to this, because pneumonia is 6th or 7th leading cause of death. It goes back and forth. I'm not sure what it is now, but it's way up there, because our so-called experts don't know what's happening. They don't study the lymph system. They don't know it's backing up into the lungs. So what do they do to these poor people? They keep feeding them. When you feed a sick person like this, you kill them. That's how they're dying. We're feeding them to death. When a person's in this condition, they have garbage backed up, the last thing they need to do is take away energy from getting rid of that and have to process more stuff. So what did John Tilden do to all of his patients? He stopped feeding them immediately, didn't use any drugs to suppress the symptoms. If you're coughing for a reason, don't suppress that. If you give drugs for the pain, you end up stopping the heart. This is how they end up dying. So you don't palliate the symptoms, and you realize that feeding intensifies the symptoms. So you stop eating till the symptoms subside. And another thing Dr. John Tilden did is he gave everybody an enema right away to relieve pressure off the system so the body can start getting rid of the stuff that it's accumulating. So there's a very simple solution to pneumonia. And there's a simple way to prevent it. And so it'll never happen. Just like colds and flus, you can prevent those. That's why I never get sick, because I'm not putting in that kind of crap in my body where my lymph system is filthy. Most people's cells are swimming in filthy sewage systems. I've got a really clean sewage system. I can have germs that don't belong inside me come inside me, And in most cases, it won't go above the toleration point unless it's really something bad, which is where food poisoning comes into play. So I explained that there are two short-term self-limited diseases in my video, Healing Secrets Revealed, and you can watch that video if you go to the description box below, and also watch Medicine is the Ultimate Tool of Control. And I explain how we have two short-term self-limited diseases and then four long-term stages of disease. And I got that partly from John Tilden. He had 7 stages of disease. I took the last 4 of his. And then I explained something that no one has really articulated that well relative to the self-limited diseases. I came up with the 2 types. And one of them is when we have food poisoning. So everything that comes inside of us that doesn't belong there has a certain toleration point. And if something comes inside of us that, that doesn't belong there, what's going to happen? Well, we usually spit it out immediately, right? But if we disguise it and make it yummy by cooking it and add all sorts of stuff to it, then it can get it to us that way, and that's how we get food poisoning. And what happens when that happens? We vomit and have diarrhea. So the body's immediately trying to get rid of that offending substance from the 2 main channels that it's coming in and going out. Otherwise, everything else that comes inside of us that doesn't belong there will eventually create a self-limited disease when we go above the toleration point. Imagine we had meters in our body that could measure the levels of certain fluids, like lymph fluid. Let's say you had a lymphometer, a crapometer for your lymph system, and its toleration point is at 100. So you can tolerate anything as long as it doesn't go above 100. Once it goes above 100, there's too many particulates in there, and simple by way of ionic pressure, it's got to go back into the tissues it surrounds. There are the colds and the flus and the skin eruptions and pneumonia, and that's a self-limited disease. It runs its course. It doesn't last long because we may have done something and bumped us above the 100 mark, and then it took a while to go back below the 100 mark, and maybe we don't shut it back off until it goes 90 or 80. Who knows how that works? But the concept is simple. Probably just shuts off as soon as the pressure changes. The more you think about it, that's just how our body works. Everything's by ionic pressure. That's how the blood brings food into our cells. And then by way of ionic pressure, the waste matter goes into the lymph fluids. But now think about this. If there's too many particulates in the lymph system and it's going above the 100 and it's got to go out the rest of the body, the rest of the cells, they actually have cell membranes, and they're monitoring. They got these little antennas, they're monitoring the rest of the body. Now what do you think a cell is going to do when they go, oh my God, there's more crap out there in the lymph system than I've got in me. I'll hold on to my crap because I know I'm inside a body. I have to respond to, the system I'm in. And if the body dies, so do I, so I'll sacrifice myself if I have to. And that's usually what leads to type 2 diabetes. There's too much crap inside the cells, so the sugar can't go in. So the simple solution for type 2 diabetes, and I know I've coached a lot of people in this situation, most of y'all, if the pancreas hasn't been damaged, if it's just the garbage in your cells, clean out your colon, go on a solid food vacation, and that will help clean out your lymph system. That will also do the same thing when the body's going for alternative channels of elimination. They call them fontanels. When the body looks for the nose and sinus areas or the lungs or even the skin as an alternative channel of elimination when the lymph system backs up. What can happen when we do a solid food vacation on a juice fast is that the colon then becomes a fontanel. By way of a retrograde flow, it can actually help pull garbage from the lymph system out the colon and then out the body. So the thing is our bodies are basically filthy inside of us. And there's a very simple solution to solve most of our problems, is address the toxicity issue of this side of the equation. Can't ignore the deficiency side, especially now that we've damaged ourselves in society. And I've mentioned many times we have 2 groups of needs because of this. And now our ideal diet, just like water fasting, no longer works because we don't live in an ideal world anymore. So we have to modify both the water fast and we have to modify our ideal diet for some of us. How do we modify the water fast? Juice fast. It's actually superior. It's a good way. It's a good application. It's a good way to help us reach the tipping point. I think it's the only way, actually. And then we need to modify the raw vegan diet, possibly, in case you're living in a climate that doesn't provide you the opportunity to get a lot of sunshine, so you're deficient in vitamin D. We know the problem that B12 is on this planet now because of the chemical revolution, and some people actually think it goes back to the Industrial Revolution also. So I might have to call this short. I see someone coming, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Go down below into the description box below and watch the Deborah Duncan show and listen to the Dr. Roba interview, and then go to my seminar. And I guarantee you guys, when you do this, you're in for a treat.